but they have failed. Our country is strong.
America wakes up to a new day following the worst attack ever on our soil.
The grieving continues this morning, as does the hunt for those responsible. Good morning, everyone. I'm Carrie Connolly.
And I'm Scott Wally. The time is 8 o'clock on this day after almost 24 hours now exactly since the terrorism began yesterday morning. Logan airports, as we mentioned, like airports all over the country, remain closed this morning.
Meanwhile, at this hour, hundreds of federal investigators are at Logan trying to determine how two jets from Boston could be hijacked within minutes of each other from different terminals. And WBZ's Dan Ray joins us live from the Hyatt inside, which is near the airport, with new information this morning. Dan, good morning.
Good morning, Carrie. Good morning, Scott. I'm inside the Harborside Hyatt, where later on this morning, we expect to hear from Massport personnel, both security personnel and administrative personnel, wanting to find out what's going on with this investigation and whether or not this airport will be reopening when other airports across the country open. As you mentioned, this really is a crime scene out here at Logan Airport, because this is where at least two of the planes took off from yesterday morning. Just about this time, it was just about 24 hours ago, that those two planes, a United airline and an American airline flight, both of which ended up impacting on the side of the World Towers buildings in New York City, and leading to that just calamity that all of us have watched on television for the last now nearly 24 hours. Both Boston newspapers this morning are reporting that some information has been developed overnight here at Logan Airport. Essentially what has happened is apparently there was some sort of an altercation in one of the parking garages between a traveler and some Arab-looking men, as they're being described. Police responded not to that altercation, but to a phone call from that traveler, as we understand it. And the police then were led to this vehicle that they did impound overnight. Inside the vehicle, we're told, was found a videotape with instructions on how to fly a plane, a copy of the Quran, holy book of the Muslim religion, as well as some other information which would seem to implicate the individuals who were in that car. We're told that there were essentially 5 individuals that the investigators now are looking to talk to. One of the networks is reporting this morning that there has been a search warrant executed at the home of a man in Venice, Florida. We also were led to believe that the people who left from Logan Airport yesterday may have come in through the Canadian border and may have actually flown from Portland, Maine, in here to Logan Airport before they headed on to New York. Now, again, a lot of this is we're piecing information together, and we hope that later on this morning we'll be able to pin down some of this information. This is a jigsaw puzzle of immense proportions. You can just imagine what the investigators are trying to deal with, not only here at Logan Airport, but on the ground in New York City, as well as at the Pentagon and in the hillside of Pennsylvania. So it's going to be a long investigation. We're going to be staying here at Logan throughout the day to hear the latest from Massport. When that news conference is held here, we will bring that to you live later on this morning. For now, Dan Ray live at Logan Airport. Back to you, Scott and Kerry.
Dan Massa, Port Authority Aviation Director Thomas Kinton said last night that when the airport does reopen, there will be, quote, very significant security changes, and I guess air travel will never be the same for anybody who uses that mode of transportation. But Massport's Security Director Joseph Lawless said that we have this is a quote, we have a very high security standard here. We are as secure, if not more secure, than any other airport in the United States. And the frightening thing is that may be true. And look what happened at Logan yesterday.
Well, you know, Scott, they were talking about, for example, eliminating a curbside checking of baggage. Well, this was not any curbside baggage which caused the problem. This was not a plane that blew up in midair and someone had smuggled a little bit of plastique in a luggage that went onto the plane. I don't know what that will accomplish. Obviously, it might make the checking of the bags a little bit more secure. Here at Logan Airport, security is pretty tight. Those of us who have flown for more than a few years remember how open this airport used to be 20 years ago. At the same time, those of us who have traveled to Europe realize that the atmosphere in European airports is very different from American airports. In European airports, it is not at all uncommon to see military personnel walking through the terminals with high-powered automatic weapons, Uzis, if you will, always on the alert for problems. Those of us who have traveled in Europe have heard stories of where they find a suspicious package. They don't mess around with it in Europe. They put it in a bomb pod and they blow it up. That's a whole different level of security that we've experienced in this country. But certainly, I think that might be the level of security that is coming. All of us remember going to Washington, D.C. Not more than a few years ago. Access to the White House, to the Capitol, very much unfettered. After some of the activities of the 1980s and the early 1990s, we now have barricades up around the Capitol to prevent automobiles from approaching the Capitol. More barricades. Part of Pennsylvania Avenue is closed off in front of the White House. So we have already certainly made concessions to security in this society, but I think we're going to see more and more as we go along. One of the things that Bob Weiss mentioned to us this morning in talking about the editor and the publisher of the Airport Journal is the relative inexperience of the people who man the security checkpoints at the airports. They are all from private security companies. They're all hired by the individual airlines who might be actually leasing a specific part of a terminal from Massport, and for the most part, they use very low-wage, entry-level people in those positions, and I think that again, if somebody really wants to try to smuggle something through, as occurred yesterday in 3 airports and 4 terminals around this country, it's not all that hard. And I think that they're going to have to look at who's going to be the security personnel. Do we need to, at this point, to step it up and make sure that the airlines hire people with criminal justice backgrounds, perhaps retired police officers? There's certainly a lot of possibilities that could be investigated in that area and would make security more tight. If they did hire inexperienced, relatively young people who perhaps are just in their first-time job, as Bob Weiss mentioned, 100% turnover. So the person that sees you going through security checkpoint at Logan today is not going to be there 100% for certain a year from now. They have to get more experienced people, probably have to pay a lot more money to get the more experienced people, but at the same time, think of what the liability these 2 airlines, American and United Airlines, are going to have from lawsuits from the families of those who died in those 2 plane disasters yesterday in New York City.
Dan, you're there this morning for the press conference. What time are we expecting that to start, and what are we expecting from them?
Well, you know, the press conference, we've heard a couple of conflicting times. We've heard 10 or 11. We've also heard that there was a staff meeting of Massport personnel at 7:30, and that following that staff meeting that someone would come out and say something. My suspicion is they're not going to be able to say too much in terms of the investigation here, because that's a federal investigation, and Massport is probably on the periphery of that, if there at all. They certainly will be able to talk about what they're going to do when this airport reopens. Certainly will reopen. Whether it reopens today, I think, is a question. But also, what happens to all the people who are stranded here in Boston? There are planes here that shouldn't be here. There are planes in other airports around the country and in Canada that should be sitting here in Boston. So it's going to be a long time once this airport reopens to get it back to any sense of normalcy. And I think a lot of the comments today at the Massport news conference are going to deal with how they're going to get this airport back running on schedule. Again, people who were expecting to leave Boston yesterday are still at hotels in the area. They're going to have to be accommodated. Then, of course, there are other people who are hoping to go today, people hoping to go tomorrow. There's only so many planes, so many seats in each plane available, and so it's going to be backed up here, I'm sure, for days to come.
All right, Dan Ray reporting from the Hyatt near the airport this morning. Dan, thank you. We know you'll keep us posted as the press conference does begin.
Now, hundreds of thousands of air travelers over the country who are in places they don't want to be this morning.
Right.
They're just, everything's at a standstill right now.
There's also a lot of people, Scott, who may have friends or loved ones on board the 2 planes that left from Boston yesterday. We do, in fact, have new information on the list of those people.
Here's a list of some of the names we have as we have them right now. Ken Waldy from Methuen. He was a Raytheon employee, as was Peter Gay. He was from Andover. Richard Ross from Newton, 58 years old. He ran a consulting firm. Neely Casey of Wellesley. Mark Bavis, former hockey player under Jackie Parker at Boston University. He's a BU grad from Providence. He was a scout for the NHL's Los Angeles Kings.
Also a hockey player, Garnet Ace Bailey, 53 years old, of Linfield, the director of pro scouting for the Los Angeles Kings hockey team. He was also a former Boston Bruins player. David and Lynn Angel, he was the executive producer of the NBC TV show Frasier. The couple was returning from their home in Chatham. Daniel Lewin, 31 years old, the co-founder of Akamai Technologies in Cambridge. Brian Sweeney, 38 years old, of Barnstable, and Jane Orth, 49, of Haverhill.
Also, John Cahill of Wellesley and the pilots of American Flight 11, Tom McGinnis of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and John Oganowski from Dracut, Mass. The list continues. Tara Creamer from Worcester, Ted Hennessy from Belmont.
And Peter, Susan, and their little girl, Christine Hansen, all from Massachusetts. Charles Jones, 48 years old, of Bedford. Bill Weems of Marblehead. David Retnick of Needham. Also
Robin Kaplan of Natick. Anna Williams Allison, 48 years old, from Stoneham. 42-year-old Jeffrey Coombs of Abington. 71-year-old Thelma Cuccinello of Wilmot, New Hampshire. 70-year-old Alex Filipoff of Concord. And Paige Farley Hackle. Paige was 46 years old. She lived in Newton.
And our list continues. Amy Jarrett, 28 years old, of North Smithfield, Rhode Island. Jesus Sanchez, 45, of Hudson. James Hayden, 47, of Westford. Ruth McCourt, 24 years old, also of Westford. Juliana Valentine McCourt, 4 years old, of Westford. Sean Nassany, 25, of Pawtucket, Rhode Island. And Lynn Goodchild, 25, of Attleboro. And of course, that is not a complete list, and we will bring that to you as soon as we get it.
It's 11 minutes after 8 o'clock now. We're going to get a check on traffic and a look at the weather as well. Barry Burbanks in the weather office. Barry?
All right, thank you, Scott, and good morning, everybody. Hi, Kerry and everybody. It looks like we're in for a nice day. We've got sunshine throughout the region. It's clear. And we find it's on the cool side, starting to warm up a little bit from what it was just an hour or so ago, getting into the 50s in some spots after being down to the 40s. It's 64 in downtown Boston. In terms of cloud cover, there's nothing around right now, but there'll be a few clouds showing up, particularly this afternoon, and especially across northern New England as the front gets ready to approach. But today it's okay. We got nice and bright and nice dry air as well. There won't be much wind either, but we will have a sea breeze developing, and that'll check the temperature from getting much higher than the upper 60s along the coast, ranging up to 73 to 76 in many of the western suburbs, a few miles away from the coastline. High tide coming up at 7:11. So the front comes through during late tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow evening, may kick off a couple of showers of thunderstorms. Then we'll get a band of rain or showers tomorrow night and early Friday morning, and that'll set the stage for some really chilly air to arrive from Canada with a north and northeasterly wind. It's going to be really cold around here on Friday, and with temperatures mostly in the upper 50s. A new tropical depression in the Gulf of Mexico. Erin is out at sea and moving away from New England, and we have Tropical Storm Felix way out there in the Atlantic, but looks like that'll move more northerly and really not affect any land areas around here at all. So the 4-day planner showing you mid-70s inland today. Similar temperatures tomorrow as more cloud cover will be around. There could be an afternoon shower. It's mostly likely to get showers tomorrow night and Friday morning, but look at the high on Friday, about 58, with a brisk north and northeast wind. On Saturday, sunny, a few clouds, up to 60 to 64 after a very cold start. Sunday should be even milder, 65 to 70 with sunshine. And that's your forecast for now, Carrie and Scott.
All right, Barry, thank you. It is 8:13 now. We're going to head back to New York City for the early show, where they are continuing to look for survivors. The good news is they have found 6 people, 5 firefighters, and 1 police officer.
Meanwhile, we will be back at 8:25. We're paying a special attention to the activity at Logan Airport this morning. We'll bring that to you at 8:25 on WBZ4 and on UPN 38.
American Airlines Flight 11. It was hijacked after takeoff from Boston. 92 people were on board, including the pilot, John Oganowski. His brother Jim is in Watertown, Massachusetts this morning. Good morning to you, Jim.
Good morning.
I'm so sorry, first of all, for your loss.
Thank you.
And for what you're going through right now. It just...
Our whole nation grieves today.
You had a gut feeling that something was wrong with your brother's plane. How did you find out about the crash?
I was personally traveling to Logan Airport at the time, just before leaving the home. I had turned on the news to see what was going on, and I noticed the first reports of an incident at the trade towers. I immediately called my sister-in-law. Her parents were visiting from Long Island, and they were getting ready to go back to Long Island yesterday. My shuttle picked me up. I was en route to Logan Airport. We stopped at a hotel where we do a shuttle transfer, and I went in to catch the news for a few minutes. I saw the second airplane. I heard it was an American Airlines flight out of Boston. I immediately called my sister-in-law again, and that's how I found out. It was only a matter of 20 minutes or so.
Did your brother Jim ever express any concern about airport security?
No, he didn't. He loved flying, and he never expressed a concern. You know, flying-wise, it's a lot safer than just getting into your car every day and driving. So we always viewed it as pretty safe.
Can you tell us about your brother, Jim? I know you've called him a hero.
I did. He was a loving dad. He had 3 girls, Laura, Caroline, and Mary, and his wife, Peg. He had an extended family, numerous brothers-in-laws, brothers, sisters, cousins, aunts, uncles. We live in a close community. For a large part of us live in Dracut, all within a few miles of each other. And it's not unusual to see numerous uncles, aunts, and cousins getting together daily just as a little dewdrop in at his house or my house or my parents' house.
How are his wife and 3 daughters doing?
I think we're all still in shock, maybe some denial. Knowing the airline community, you go to work one day and then many times you come back the next. I think today will be equally as hard because today would have been the day John would have been returning.
John had over 20 years' experience flying as a pilot. Have you spoken with American Airlines or with investigators about what happened yesterday?
2 representatives of American Airlines came to the home, to his home, and they were very professional. Shared any information that we asked. We didn't ask much other than the obvious.
Your family obviously is shattered by this. What would you like people to remember about your brother, Jim?
He was a great guy. My older brother, my sister calls him a saint. He was a guy that anybody who met liked. He was a natural-born leader. He took initiatives his big legacy is saving a lot of land in Dracut, but the love of family, the love of land, the love of flying, all those will be his legacy.
Do you have any desire to come to New York to see what's going on here?
No, I don't.
Your family?
I don't believe so. I don't think we need to see that. No one has expressed a desire to see that. And
any interest in speaking with other family members, those who might have been on the plane or who are going through what you are at this moment?
At this point, no. We have an extended family of brothers and brother-in-laws and sisters throughout the country that we're just trying to get a hold of and get them back to the local community so we can all grieve together.
Well, Jim Ogonowski, I appreciate your time, and as you continue with that grieving process, our thoughts and prayers are with you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, I think we need to remain united as a country and support the president and take any type of action that he deems fit to get the cowards that did something like this to us. Thank you.
Jim Ogonowski, thank you. It is 8:17. Bryant.
All right, Jane. Judith Miller is a New York Times reporter who wrote an acclaimed series on Osama bin Laden's organization. She's also a counterterrorism expert and the author of the book Germs, Biological Weapons, and America's Secret War. Ms. Miller, good morning.
Good morning, Brian.
Do you have any doubt that this is the work of Osama bin Laden?
Well, while we're all exercising caution, skepticism, in my mind, this has all of the earmarks of an Osama bin Laden operation.
Why does it have his signature?
Because it is an enormously sophisticated operation, because there was no claim of credit, which is another hallmark, because it was the kind of terrorist operation which was intended to amaze the world. He always tries to outdo himself. In 1998, he blew up 2 embassies in Africa, American embassies. Now he wanted to do something that the world would never forget, and I think all evidence, early evidence, points to his having done that.
I spoke with an Arab expert this morning in London who said there are a number of cells, organizations, even some individuals who could have done this. Do you disagree?
I don't disagree, and I think that's the problem, because even though you and I and all of America is talking about Osama bin Laden, the real problem is these networks that he has. And over the past 10 years, he's trained roughly 5,000 militants who have passed through his training camps, just the ones in Afghanistan that he personally controls. There's another 50,000 people from all over the world who have passed through the Afghan training
So what are you
camps.
telling me? It could have been one of his disciples and it would have the same signature?
Absolutely, and he could
Would it have to have his approval?
Group. I think it almost certainly would have had to have his approval. He is the mastermind of terror. He's the symbol of terror. He is the financier of terror. But he is also has an organization which is very highly compartmentalized. So one group doesn't necessarily know what the other group is doing. And that's what makes it so difficult to catch these people. This is going to be an enormous intelligence and law enforcement challenge.
Ms. Miller, let me ask you to sit tight for 1 second. I want to go to Washington real quick, where Jim Stewart has a late report. Jim, good morning again. What do you got?
Bryant, federal authorities today say that they are headed in an important direction in their investigation, and that is to discover the location and identities of what they believe to be a cell of colleagues who assisted these suicide bombers who may still be in the United States. I would tell you that they have no indication that additional attacks are planned, but certainly that is a great concern of theirs. Let me run down the list for you of what they have been doing overnight and this morning. They have executed search warrants that we know of in Davie, Florida, in Daytona, Florida. They have seized a van in New Jersey. I believe this to be the van that has received a lot of attention, that was rumored to have been loaded with explosive material. That is not true. The van was stopped based on another tip because of the occupants in that van. They are being questioned now. It is unclear whether they, in fact, are going to be held or not. The white Mitsubishi was seized at Logan Airport in Boston. It was found to contain some materials in Arabic and apparently a flight manual as well. This reported earlier today, of course, by the Boston Herald. They have found some material, though, in that car that leads them to believe that the people who seized the aircraft out of Boston were driving it. They are still puzzled, they tell us this morning, by what happened to United Flight 93. And, Bryant, that was the aircraft that was hijacked from Newark en route to San Francisco that crashed mysteriously in Pennsylvania after it did an abrupt 120-degree turn and was headed in a path, they said, that would have taken it straight to Washington, D.C. over Camp David. That airplane, they say now, was flying low and steady at 500 feet altitude when it dipped nose first into the ground. In all of these flights, Bryant, they had been receiving telephone calls, numerous telephone calls from terrified passengers. Many of their best leads, in fact, early leads have come from that, and a study of the flight manifest, which has revealed several names that they are now checking out. I believe principally those names in Florida.
And, Jim, do they expect that crash scene in Pennsylvania to reveal an awful lot more to them?
The black box that we've talked about so often that contains recordings of conversations that take place in the cockpit is located in that aircraft in the tail section. This plane augured in nose first. There is the presumption that it may be the first of the serious evidence to be recovered.
All right. Jim Stewart, great stuff. Thank you very much. We'll get back later. Continuing with Judith Miller. So essentially what you're telling me is there could have been a disciple of Osama bin Laden's who did all this, but in all probability, he would have told bin Laden's, sought his approval?
Well, bin Laden has a group of trained terrorist leaders around him. They report to him, but they are a group of equals. He is clearly the most important person in that network, but getting rid of him would not solve the problem. And I think that's what we have to keep in mind tonight and today. These networks have deep roots, even in our own country. The group that tried to blow up Seattle and New York during the millennium, this was an Osama bin Laden group, the government alleges. They had a cell in Boston. These are not riffraff, Bryant. These are people who are well-trained, who appear to be middle class, who come into a community and insert themselves into a community.
So if and when the government turns around and targets bin Laden, and should they by chance succeed, you say that hardly eradicates the problem.
It does not eradicate the problem, and the government has been saying this now itself for a long time. That's what I hear from government officials. And that's what I learned when I visited Afghanistan and interviewed some of the prisoners, the people who have been trained by these networks. These people are prepared to die for him, but they will work for other organizations. This is going to be a hugely difficult task.
Are they guns for hire?
They are guns for hire. You know, there are all kinds of people. They're not the kind of wild-eyed people you see standing on street corners.
Some are just plain old mercenaries.
Absolutely. Some are adventurers. Some really do want to die for Allah. And some of those people are even commercial pilots.
Judith Miller, thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up on 8:25, some will disappear for local news. We'll continue with our coverage here.
Good morning, Scott Wally, along with Kerry Connolly here at our WBZ4 studios as we await a news conference from Massport a little bit later on this morning. We can tell you that Logan Airport remains closed this morning.
And there are reports, Scott, this morning in both the Boston Herald and the Globe that investigators are now focusing on a group of suspects.
Here's what we have learned from the Herald, reporting that the investigators seized a car in the parking garage at Logan Airport. Inside the car, Arabic language flight training manuals. The source says 5 Arab men had been identified as suspects, including one who was a trained pilot. Now, at least 2 suspects flew to Logan on Tuesday from Portland, Maine, where authorities believe they had traveled after crossing over from Canada recently, said the source. The bags from one of the men did not make his connection, and the Globe reports that the bags contained a copy of the Quran, an instructional video on flying commercial airliners, and a fuel consumption calculator, among other items. The FBI in Boston is refusing to comment.
Apparently, Scott, a traveler in one of the parking garages is what started all of this. They had some sort of an altercation, and he made a phone call from the garage saying, you need to check these people out, and this is where we stand at this time.
That led into the automobile in the garage.
Exactly. But we do want to tell you, of course, with these tragic events, there was some question as to whether voting should continue in the 9th District congressional race. As you know, the primary was yesterday. Well, the voting did go on. It didn't in New York City, but it did here in Boston. Stephen Lynch came out the winner in the Democratic primary. He led the way with 40% of the vote. On the Republican side, State Senator Joanne Sprague is the winner. She will face Lynch in the general election, which is October 16th.
The Democratic and Republican mayoral primaries were scheduled for New York City yesterday, and those were postponed. It's coming up on 8:27 now, and let's get a check on the morning commute with Rich Kirkland. Rich?
All right, Scott, thank you very much. One of the bigger backups we've had today, Scott, Route 93, only now starting to recover. We had a stuck bus and an accident downtown. Look how badly backed up it is. Let me show you on the map just what we're talking about. It's bumper to bumper from here around 128 and 93 all the way to downtown Boston. Bumper to bumper traffic, and only now starting to recover. Back live, we look at the Tobin Bridge. A lot of people used it instead of 93. It's a Chelsea to Charlestown situation. Sumner Tunnel is in very good shape. One of the reasons for that is very light traffic downtown, easy traffic getting into the Callahan, very light traffic as a matter of fact, and not a lot of traffic using the Sumner Tunnel. We've had our delays on the expressway, but now things are in good shape. That South Shore ride was slow earlier in Rockland, even in Plymouth, Braintree Expressway. Now that is easing up quite a bit. We haven't had a lot of turnpike headaches at all, as you see here live. Heaviest traffic really by the Doubletree Hotel and Soldiers Field Road right down at the bottom of the screen, funneling its way right down to Kenmore Square and Copley Square. That's where the heaviest traffic is. The expressways, the turnpike, I should say, is doing much better. Roads like 495, there's a bit of a problem in Haverhill by Route 97. There's delays on both sides of 495 there. They're working to clear a crash in that spot. I'm Rich Kirkland, WBZ4 News. Here's Carrie and Scott.
All right, Rich, thank you. It is 8:28 now. Let's head over to Barry Burbank in the weather office for a look at our forecast today. Barry, good morning.
Good morning, Carrie and Scott, and hi, everybody. It's a beautiful morning. We have the crystal clear, deep blue sky and sunshine filling in all over New England, as a matter of fact. But we started out on the cool side this morning. We still have a few spots in the lowlands which haven't got out of the 40s yet, but most places are rising up through the 50s now, and some of the urban centers are in the lower 60s, as you can see. Erin continues to spin at sea, but in a slowly weakening mode and slowly moving away from New England. So we look to the west instead and see where our next weather is coming from, and some cloud cover will spin across northern New England today, and just a few patches down here. So the sunshine will continue nice and bright for most of the day. As the wind is very light, it'll be sort of floppy in direction inland, but along the coast is sure to go to a sea breeze at 5 to 15 miles an hour. So that means we'll have temperatures no higher than the upper 60s at the immediate coastline, ranging up to 73 to 76 inland. We get a high tide at 7:11. A front comes down tomorrow with more extensive cloud cover, especially in the afternoon, with a couple of scattered showers or a thunder shower possible. And then we get a band of showers after the front goes by on the backside with a northerly wind into Friday morning. It's going to be rather chilly with some parts partial sunshine possible Friday afternoon. We should see temperatures going up to only 58 for a high on Friday. And then after a very cold Saturday morning, it should be sunny to partly cloudy to 60, 65, and a little bit warmer than that with sunshine on Sunday. That's my latest forecast.
All right, Barry, thank you. Once again, Logan Airport closed this morning. MBTA and Amtrak running on schedule. We'll, of course, keep continuing coverage for you here out of our WBZ4 studios and UPN 38, but we do want to return to the early show with more from New York City.
Also, the Massport News Conference, which is going to be held a little bit later on this morning. We'll bring that to you live when it happens. Right now, to the early show, we'll be back.